Good morning. Here we are. Biz Doc Podcast, episode 4. I missed you. So much goes on in a week. You know, maybe we need to do this more than once a week, Kellyanne.
Yeah.
But for right now, we're going to get a fast roll on Monday. What another wild week. So we had another Friday, and another bank says on Friday, what'd they say? I'm not feeling well. This time it's Deutsche Bank. So I'll tell you a little clue about this. What I like to do, and here's a lesson for all entrepreneurs that are out there, business leaders and things like this. I carefully look at headlines late on Friday, where some people are trying to get away for the weekend. I always make time right after the market closes to go take a look at some headlines that come out, because those are where they have the headlines that people want to bury, and sometimes it's big news. So always make time after 4:30 Eastern to take about a half hour, maybe an hour if you could, and it really gets you ready for the weekend as you're sitting about planning and thinking about your business and what you're going to do next week. Because if you're an all-the-timer, you're working part of Saturday, probably doing your planning on Sunday. I do planning on Sunday mornings, going through my stuff. I don't see it as work. I see it as almost like leisure reading, where I'm absorbing what's going on. But Friday afternoon is where those sneaky headlines come out, because companies that have some maybe not so perfect news, or even bad news, or even a crisis, they roll it out late on Friday so that it gets lost in the weekend news cycle, including March Madness and things going on. So one of the things that went out was Deutsche Bank. But anyway, Deutsche Bank is kind of leaning, doesn't look like they're going to fall over, but they certainly came out and said, I'm not feeling very well, and so we're going to send them out for the banking equivalent of a COVID test to see if they're sick. But I'm here, as usual, with Kellyanne, the Swiss Army knife, pulling charts, running clips, and watching your chats while I do the talking. How was your weekend?
It was good. I tried to watch The Whale that won an Oscar and like all that jazz, and I couldn't get through the first 20 minutes. So
there you go. It just wasn't doing it for you.
No, it's too difficult to watch. Too difficult.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, Deutsche Bank was looking for a whale. You know,
yeah,
looking for a whale to come save the day.
Yep.
But, and we're going to take 3 of your questions today, 2 or 3, definitely 2, maybe 3 on Super Chat. So you go take a look in there. Keep them clean, keep them topical, but we love to answer questions and talk about things that matter to entrepreneurs, and leaders around the world, because that is the mission of Valuetainment, to bring great content to you, and my personal mission to leave you better than I found you. All right, so let's roll off. What a tough week in Washington, and believe it or not, I have a lesson at the end of this if we just get through it. For TikTok, the TikTok CEO gets called to Washington after roughly, I think I added it up, was it 1,622 headlines? Kellyanne can audit me on that. That's my personal estimate of whether TikTok was going to be banned or not over the last 30 days, all those headlines. Some of them are syndicated news that's getting recycled. So ultimately, the thing about it, if you haven't been paying attention, is that TikTok and its servers and everything, they believe are in China being snooped by the PRC. And so consequently, there's a lot of concern about that. Like, is data on other parts of your phone getting accessed, sniffed, or stolen, or just recorded in terms of privacy, building a fingerprint and a profile on you on servers overseas that can be used for more than just, as Facebook would say, just marketing and retargeting. That's all we're doing. That's the Facebook side of it. But there's a little bit more nefarious possibilities going on offshore over in China. But nonetheless, so eventually enough senators and congressmen, and I don't mean just Republicans, or as Democrats too, tell him, you need to get your butt to Washington. We're going to ask you some questions. And so he seemed pretty well prepared, but it kind of felt like he was a little flustered at times. He was looking through things. Seemed like he was scripted, but these were skilled grillers. And I'm not talking about people doing barbecue in Texas. Those senators and congressmen are skilled grillers. And so here he was at a congressional hearing getting grilled. And after his day of testimony, as a matter of fact, can you find that on my Twitter? My Twitter, last night I ran a poll. So let's see if we can pull this up. And it was a poll I ran on, you can just go to my Twitter and go to a couple things I posted last night on what I think happened. But what was very interesting is the news coverage of the hearing seemed to indicate that there was some real thoughts about what had happened here and whether it made it, yeah, that's it right there. Oops, no, Why isn't it letting? Why you click on it? Not going to let you go in there?
I'll have to sign in. I don't have a Twitter.
All right, well, let's sign in and then we'll pop that up. But anyway, there's a lot of news out there that was saying, hey, let's just say you believe there is a 50-50 chance. Because half the people saying, no, it's free speech, it's an app, don't worry about it. That's AOC. AOC runs out and says, oh, we can't take the risk of taking down, an app like this. What are you talking about? You wanted to take down Truth Social. You wanted to take down Parler, right? The conservative one a year ago. So, what's going on with all this? But they seem to be saying that the CEO may have made it a little bit worse because there were some Democrats on there that got very pointed at him. This is, why can't you tell us you don't understand how the data is accessed and stored? Why can't you tell us this? The reason you can't is because it's exactly what you're doing. It's exactly what's going on. So the news coverage was running with the, maybe it's getting a little worse. And as soon as we get the poll up here, we'll talk to you. But there was also this other voice and said, well, the Biden administration, well, let's just see if we can get TikTok sold to somebody else. And so wait a minute, if it gets sold to somebody else, but the servers, all technology and the team, everything are still over there in China, how does that change the fact that we're all very worried about it? And how does it change the fact that everybody is wondering if their kids and any adults that have TikTok on their phone, that it's not in there sniffing your phone? How do you sort of erase the whiteboard and go back to zero on that and say, okay, now it's good? Well, the answer is you got to shut it off. You've got colleges and the U.S. government that if you are on campus at certain colleges using their Wi-Fi, like in student union, library, classrooms, they prohibit access of TikTok on those particular subnets. And then you go to the U.S. government, there's government buildings, and government has said, and state government buildings that are saying, you may not access TikTok in the Wi-Fi or the network that's here. They're also blocking that. So there's an awful lot of blocking going on for people to be saying nothing to see here. And there's a small group like AOC saying nothing to see here. I think there's a lot to see here, and that's why none of my kids are on TikTok. I've dissuaded my niece and nephew from being on TikTok, and just say, hey, if it's out there really sniffing, you don't want to be there. So let's go see here. That's it. Just click on that. There we go. Just to see if we can put that on screen. Tell me when we're there. Are we up?
Okay, let me know when it's there.
3, 2, 1.
It's up.
Okay, so you can see, so we had 174 votes, unscientific Biz Doc poll from last night. And the choices I gave them was 33% said, it's still 50-50. Lots of talk, even though he didn't look so good in front of Congress. Then the next group here was, the odds have dropped under 50%, was about 17%. But interesting, 33% thought that the odds have now jumped over 50% they'll be banned. Now near 100%, actually 15% believe that. So you have got 48% believe that the odds are now over 50% or near certainty. And that kind of lines up. But I think you should take a look at this, and there's a lesson in here, is that some social media is not so good, like TikTok, and isn't really applicable necessarily for all forms of marketing. But I want to use this and kind of transition here into a comment, is that not all social media is applicable and good for your business and good for your kids. And in this case, I think you can see not so good things can happen with it. But if you're using social media for your business, here's my message. Don't worry about TikTok. Don't worry about that at all. It skews Generation Z. If you're selling products to them, then you do need to think about that. But a lot of people here, entrepreneurs and such, maybe you're thinking about, okay, this brings up social media. What should I be doing? LinkedIn ads, the business tools are said to work pretty good, especially B2B, and especially recruitment. And I read an article this weekend. I wish I grabbed the clip, the link to it. We could have put it up. But it talked about that people think of LinkedIn as white collar. No, there's people up there that says, hey, I'm a film editor, or hey, I'm a production manager. And by the way, we're looking for a production manager at Valuetainment. If that's you, go check us out on LinkedIn. And a lot of great jobs that are out there, contract jobs, arts jobs, that people are seeing through LinkedIn, and that not just posting the job, but that a well-crafted business page. So I ran a quick little tally, and I texted a couple folks from early stage businesses last night, and I asked them, hey, because I'm an investor in one of them, and the score was 1-to-1, so unscientific. One did not have a LinkedIn business page. The other did have a LinkedIn business page on LinkedIn, but both of them are using LinkedIn for recruitment and actually had, jobs posted, which was sort of interesting. So you see that works well. Facebook has got good business tools, and actually Facebook for creators, there's a lot of tools on there where creators are getting paid even better. And Instagram, I've read, is that it gives you likes and it gives you reach, but the actionableness of it is if you're really selling something. So if you've got, you're selling digital goods, or you're selling things and you've got influencers that show it on there and they can link back now to your website where you can have an e-commerce sale, that's strong. And which brings us to Twitter. And I know Twitter's a bit of a hot button lately, but Twitter has a surprising element that, again, in my unscientific outreach, I found, and that was this. Do you know Twitter is fantastic for instant customer service? I've used it. If you go back in my Twitter and go look back 3 years, a couple times I've used it with American Airlines. I'm sitting on this flight, this is what you've said, this is what you've done, and I'm executive platinum on American Airlines. I've been executive platinum for 3 years. I had a gap there right around the early phase of COVID, but the rest of the time I've traveled a lot and I've been executive platinum. And so I reached out and said, hey, I'm executive platinum, this is what happened on this flight. And I got a response. And so I got Wi-Fi in the sky because I had logged in up there. And I got a response from American Airlines. Hey, sorry about that. So guess what? They were watching for @American Airlines, and it wasn't just like @American Airlines customer service. I just tagged @American Airlines. And Patrick also has done some of that. As a matter of fact, I've seen Patrick on just a common product where something wasn't perfect or something we needed to contact somebody for customer service. He reaches out on Twitter and he actually got response. Not because he's Patrick Bet-David. Once they find out he's Patrick Bet-David, I'm sure they don't want him to say anything negative because he's got millions and millions of social media followers that are not just followers, are paying attention every day. And he gets a response. Hey, whoa, sorry, let's reach out to this email immediately, or this, or here's the phone number, support number. And so, I think social media over the last, month, I've been seeing a lot of hits happening on social media, but I think you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because TikTok is like the worst of social media. And yes, we're seeing articles about Facebook and especially young teenage girls going through ultra comparative and ultra competition for comparative, and we all know what that means is they're comparing themselves to classmates. It gets ultra competitive and they're feeling depressed that they're not this or not that. And actually, hats off to Dove Soap, who's run ads talking about safe, sane use of social media. So all of that has been out, and there's been a lot of negativity on it, but I just thought it was important to kind of point out that you still need to have a social media plan. And I think if you're an entrepreneur out there and you're not trying to put your voice and news on Twitter and then being alert on Twitter if someone reaches out on a customer service issue, and it could be Patrick Bet-David, and you're not using LinkedIn for recruiting, and then if you're able to sell e-commerce and digital goods, you're not using Facebook and Instagram in that way, well then you need a new strategy. And it may not be your nephew because he's so good with all the social media stuff that's going on. It may be you need to get a digital media agency, and not one that says, oh, we're gonna update your website, we're gonna do all this, but someone that knows how to bridge from social media back to commerce. And I was really kind of surprised with my unscientific work over the weekend on how few companies were out there. So that's my 2 cents on all this, starting with, if that CEO, Kellyanne from TikTok, after that terrible set of hearings, if he ends up in a Chinese labor camp, we know what happened.
Oh gosh.
It says he got home and they're like, you did terrible, off you go. So the other thing was banking. There was banking over the weekend that was also pretty interesting. Was this. First Citizen is on the cusp of buying SVB. And remember I told you a week ago you had to audit me. Every time I say SVB, I'm supposed to say what's left of SVB.
What's left of SVB?
So
Got it.
First Citizen is on the cusp of buying what's left of SVB. So that was kind of buried in the Final Four news this weekend. You talk, by the way, Final Four, talk about big banks falling. If you want to think of the March Madness as a bunch of banks, the big banks didn't make it to Final Four, and it was a bunch of small banks that did. So March Madness felt like the banking industry if you just like took your grid and put a bunch of bank names on it and look at bracket busting. But anyway, First Citizen is in Raleigh, traded on the NASDAQ, and they've traded very well, a solid bank. I think they're part of the Russell index. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that's correct. And they ranked 33rd at the end of last year in terms of size of regional banks. There's a lot of rankings out there for total loan value, total asset value. And this was a multivariate, so multi-point analysis, and they were 33rd. And now I look at it and I'm like, how many banks have fallen? Like 4 of them? So now they're probably 29 just by default because of everybody else in front of them that's fallen down. And picking up some of the assets of SVB, I think they're probably going to jump. So they're probably, what would you think? Probably 27, 25. So the transaction, I think, is going to make First Citizen like a top 25 bank, maybe higher, depending on where it goes. But we talked about this last week, and I want to bring it up again because I got a couple direct messages about a banking strategy to have a backup. And I'm going to nickname this B.O.S.S, B-O-S-S. You know, a bank option secondary strategy. And what I talked about last week, and I'm going to repeat it, was this, maybe I went too fast because I was a little too caffeinated, and I feel kind of caffeinated this morning, as a matter of fact, was this, is have a backup bank, and then 2 checking accounts at 2 different banks. And maybe one of them is a large regional, or maybe even one of the big 4. The big 4, of course, Chase, Citi, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. And so you're one of the big 4, and then a lot of regionals. And so I wouldn't have 2 regionals, and I would maybe check to see if it was one of the larger regionals. But have 2 of them, and maybe just pay your rent through your secondary bank. Put the money to rent or lease your building, put it in there, pay it out of that. Why? Because now you have a secondary account set up, and if you're only doing 1 transaction a month, you can probably get a checking account with very low fees, park 10 grand in there, and then drop your rent and just pay the rent out of it, chunk, chunk, chunk. One deposit in per month, 1 payment for rent, that's your backup. Then your other bank here, so if you're with somebody was like you're in the East Coast and perhaps you're with somebody as large as Deutsche Bank who says, you know, I'm not feeling well, you can jump into action and say, hey, let's move more money over here to, and let's just say your backup bank was, you know, Chase. For a lot of people, including me, I have a high regard for Chase. Full disclosure, I'm with Chase Private Bank. They handle everything for me and the Biz Doc babe, but maybe that's your backup. And then you have a regional you can go into and they handle your SBA loan and things like that. But at a moment's notice, you could say, something's up, I'm going to move money over here. So you should already set up a couple transfers a month so that all the routing number and everything, and it's almost like recurring, so you could just hit it. Move the money over there, and now you've got it in your other bank as a backup. With the instability of the banking industry, there's so much pressure also with inflation on entrepreneurs like you and me that being pre-prepared there is big. So I call it the B.O.S.S, Bank Option Secondary Strategy. Tell your VP of Finance, your Director of Finance, whoever it is, you want to have this in place so that you can move things over. And I'll give you a real-world example. What if you've been sweeping, say, 40 grand twice a month to Paychecks or to ADP to pay your people, and you hear something going on, you can make a fast transfer or have backup savings so that you can just transfer it from the other bank. As a matter of fact, it's not a bad idea to actually have your critical payroll transfers set up with both your primary and your backup checking account. Something happens, you can be running your business because you have a fire extinguisher in the kitchen in plain sight. Why? So that you never have to use it, but it's right there in plain sight, easy to grab when you need it. So I thank you very much for the direct messages asking more about this. And so I've nicknamed it, probably put it in the chaz, the Biz Doc's B.O.S.S, Bank Option Secondary Strategy. But which happens if on a Friday during the quiet news cycle, your bank tries to sneak a little press release out that says, I'm not feeling very well. And so that you can be feeling well on Monday because you are covered. So speaking of money, this is very interesting. I kind of like this. Stripe finally finished its fundraising round. Now, I did a case study on Stripe a couple years ago. And can you find just the, we'll just find the thumbnail for that. So it's Biz Doc case studies. It would have been the original one, and it was Stripe. And I think I did it like exactly 3-4 years ago because I really thought that Stripe, like PayPal, was going to be a player. When you look at all the fintechs that were out there, I believed Stripe had what it took to go a ways. Now, as a fintech player, I think at the time they were also in the vicinity of $10 billion of value. Now, that may seem like a lot, but if you're in fintech and you're in payments and banking, actually here we go, there it is right there. And Kellyanne, can you put the link to this case study in the comments this week?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So if you want to go back and see this, and when did I do that? 4 years ago exactly, and the title of it was How Stripe Became a $10 Billion Challenger to PayPal. Well, I'm glad to say, looking back, the Biz Doc apparently was right. Now they're a $50 billion fintech. But one of the things I thought was interesting about Stripe is they were from the beginning, they were big on security. And they also knew who they wanted to be. And if you took a look at what they were doing, people said, oh, Stripe's going to power Shopify, and they're going to do things like that. Well, now we're seeing they're doing far more than that. As a matter of fact, the Minect app, M-I-N-N-E-C-T, which was developed by Valuetainment after Patrick Bet-David had a vision for an app where you could come together and pay by the minute to connect with an expert. So got a minute? Let's connect. Minect. Put together, we use Stripe as that platform, and it covers dozens of countries where we're taking Minect, and also gives security. And it's easy. And so now companies are using it for apps like we use for Minect. And if you haven't used Minect and you want to connect with an expert, my goodness, talk about how easy it is. You just download the Minect app for Android or iOS, look in there for topics somebody you want to talk to. Even the Biz Doc and Patrick Bet-David, we're right there as experts. You can pay by the minute to have a video call, or you can get ask us an answer in text, give you an answer response, or answer in text. And what we'll do is we'll give you a video answer and even provide a couple links back to additional resources. And that's the point of Minect. Well, Stripe powers it. And just like I just described for Minect, Stripe powers so many other apps. So I was seeing this coming when they were just 10 billion 4 years ago. And I said, of all the fintech opportunities that were out there, I thought this really had some legs. Well, they, like everybody else, have also endured the season of ridiculous valuations, which started halfway through 2021 as the United States basically printed, we say printed, but it's not really printed more, it's like put into circulation, 1.4 trillion with a T, trillion, so it's no longer B's, it's T's, $1 trillion, and we gave everybody the COVID relief checks, et cetera. Well, that drove asset prices up when one of the assets is the implied valuation of a startup. And so away Stripe went, they really popped up, and in 2021, their valuation was $95 billion valuation. Kellyanne, somebody believed they were worth $95 billion when they put money into them. And by the way, people say, well, is this one of those billion-dollar rounds? No. They've had multiple rounds, and the one that I'm talking about today that they just completed is Series I. I believe it's called Series I. And so previously, they'd only raised about $2.2 billion over Series A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, showing all those rounds. That's all they had raised. And they went out and raised money in 2021 at a $95 billion valuation. Well, they went out recently, and there's a lesson here for all of us, is that there is a good time and there's a bad time to be going out trying to raise capital. And the good times was 2021, and right now we're coming in a tight time. So let's go take a look at Stripe, what happened. So they go out at the end of last year, early this year, people starting to get back to work, some things are shifting back, COVID, not back to normal, still a lot going on, but nonetheless, it wasn't what it was a year prior. So the end of 22, some normalcy coming back. And they went out and they wanted to raise a bunch of money at a $55 billion valuation. Well, actually it was more than that, but it was significantly down from the $95 billion valuation they had raised toward the, second half of 2021. And they're going out this time, they were looking for $5-6 billion. So this is a company that's raised about $2.5 billion, and another 6 is going to bring them up to like $8-9 billion. So this is a big raise. And they're doing it with, a little over $55 billion in valuation. They get to February and they're having trouble doing it. There's rumors that they were trying to go public and they're like, no, we're just trying to raise a round. And now the rumor is that they've got a hard cap on $55 billion valuation. And then it came that they haircut that down to $50 billion valuation. They just raised money, just now. $6.5 billion was raised at a $43.5 billion valuation. So $43.5 billion valuation. Down from 95 in 21, down from way over 55 at the beginning of the year, down from 55 in February, down from 50, we settle on 43.5 billion, we raised 6.5 million, 43.5 and 6.5, pre-money valuation plus the money you raise is post-money valuation, 50 million on the nose. And this is a great company. You got to remember what Stripe has achieved and what they're powering. This is not some fintech that says maybe we're going to do something, maybe we're going to get to something, maybe something's going to be there, and this is what we hope. This is an established company that's out there raising money, for Series I. They've raised money successfully. But anyway, they've now raised $8.7 billion with $6.5 billion raised just now. And so that shows, so here's a lesson for us. Number one, I think it's very helpful to see how great companies go. So go watch the original Biz Doc case study on Stripe, and then go back in and just search any one of a number of articles you can find recently. Go Stripe financing, $6.5 billion. And you'll find a bunch of great articles on it. Crunchbase is out there, TechCrunch is out there, or even Business Insider. Those are usually locations for news that get it right when it comes to, earlier stage companies that are out there raising capital. But now we'll give you the story. So what's the lesson for you and me? The lesson for you and me is if you're trying to raise money right now, and a lot of you reach out and say, hey, Biz Doc, can I talk to you guys about raising money? Sure, talk to one of the valuetainment guys. Let's put together an engagement. Let's look at a pitch deck. Let's look at your elevator speech. Let's look at your business and your differentiators, all of which I'll do an engagement with you, and let's see if you can go out and raise money. And sometimes I tell you, even if you put this in the best way forward, it's going to be really tough to raise money right now. You have to maybe find friends and family and close-in capital. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. But right now, you take a look at Stripe going from 95 on the value down to 43.5. That's, less than half of the peak valuation there. And so right now, you got to focus on being lean, number one. Number two, you got to focus on knowing your expenses. And we talked about this last week, by the way, when we were talking about knowing where your expenses are and knowing what are you paying right now. We were talking about how cable TV expenses in life and business can creep up on you and knowing where you are. So living lean and focus on growth. Most investors want first a growing organization to invest in, point one. Point one is the entrepreneur has to be bankable. So that's a table stake. Do I believe this entrepreneur can do what they're saying in the market they're talking about and be successful doing it? Do I believe that? Second point, okay, what have they built here? And do they have skin in the game? Yes. Third point, show me the growth. Capable entrepreneur, great company that they have skin in the game and they have built this, and then are they growing? Are they getting traction? Are they making the second, third, and fourth sales, as they say? Anybody can say, hey, it's our first month, we got 5 sales. Okay, so all your friends bought it. That's great. That's good. but we really want to see replicable and codifying the sales side of it. And so for Stripe, they have all those things, but valuations are going to be tough and going to be down right now. Now is the time to get lean, stay lean, and get to the back half of 2023, because with interest rates and everything else, that's where it's going to be. Now, if you're a business and you're already in motion, now may be the time, if you haven't done it, to think of alternative financing methods. Alternative financing is, I mean, if you haven't considered SBA loans because of bureaucracy, you got to work with banks and all this stuff, you might want to consider it. Some of them are 30 years long at reasonable interest rates, makes it a low payment, but don't think of it as 30 years. Think of it as 3, 4, 5 years max, but the 30 years gives you a manageable payment. But don't do it unless you're really at this inflection point where you really think your business is at a point of replication. This is where you can grow your business and drive your business and build muscle while everybody else is inside hiding and waiting for things to come back. Kind of goes back to my comment on social media. This is where you refine what's going on in your business. So don't sit on the sidelines. Now is the time to be working hard and refining who you are, what you are, and really making best use of the people you've got and focus on those people and get those people to be absolutely thrifty and as focused and thinking like an owner as you are. That's how I see it. And so that little note on Stripe just shows you how tough it can be, even for the big boys. So don't fret, don't worry. It's tough for everyone, but now's the time to go build muscle and put yourself in position. So when the smoke clears, you are stronger and you have made use of it. And as they say, if I can sail in the rough seas, you want to sail against me on a clear, beautiful lake, I'm gonna kick your butt. Onward. So I talked about it a minute ago. I want to talk about it here. Let's talk about March Madness and the #1 seeds, because there's really something in there that I think is for the rest of us. And let me kind of walk you through this. I was looking at the #1 seeds and all the seeds fell. And basically, I looked at it and I said, really, are all the #1 seeds falling because they're not #1 seeds? Or are they falling maybe because the #1 seed was based on conference championship and the body of work for the whole season? Okay, winning the conference championship and conference tournament is tough, and that's how you can become a #1 seed. But there's a lot of #2s, 3s, 4 seeds that also were falling. And I was reading, this is the first time 0 top seeds reached the Elite 8 for the first time since the ranking system started in 1979.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
Since they started, since 1979. So there were 0 top seeds in the Elite 8. Final Fours had many years where no #1s made it. But there was 2, 2, 3, 5. There was still a lot of big teams. So the question I had was, are these upsets, or is the seeding system wrong? Do they maybe need to go back and kind of handicap it differently? There's NCAA realignment happening. So now you'll take a college that gets maybe brought into the Pac-10, or in the case of basketball, into the ACC. In the ACC, where you've got Duke and Carolina and NC State and Wake Forest, who always show up. And you have to get through that. Maybe your season record doesn't represent that. You might finish, second in the Pac-10 perhaps. Well, I think that there's a rethinking of that. So I'm going to leave that there and talk about this way. How many things have you seen in your business, in your life, where maybe that's just the way we've always done it, and that's the way it's always been, and we are looking at it from the standpoint of, why change? Well, the answer is, just like we talk about expenses can creep up on you, other things can creep up on you. I'll share an image, and we can't show this for copyright reasons, but there was, a movie, and Jeff Bridges was in the movie, and he gets elected president, and there's a very interesting scene in there where he was trying to explain to 2 of his lieutenants on his staff why certain things were happening, and he was telling them not to be surprised, but go out and do something about it. And he tells them the story about the apes in a cage. So I'm going to tell you the story about the apes in a cage, because you may be able to use this with your people, because it makes an important point, and that is this. So you have 4 apes in a cage, and you put a banana at the end of a string and a little ladder there at the bottom. You wait about 5 minutes. Before you know it, one of those apes is going to step on that ladder and reach up, try to get the banana. At that moment, you hose down all the apes with freezing cold water, and you keep spraying them for 3, 4, 5 minutes. The apes are crazy, they're jumping around in the cage, but you do that. A little bit later, another one of those apes thinks about it, steps on the ladder, goes for the banana. Spray them all down again with the freezing cold water. Now turn the freezing cold water off. You won't need it. Next thing, take one of the original 4 apes out of the cage, put a new ape in the cage. Wait a minute. In a minute, that new ape starts to go up the ladder for the banana, and the other 3 apes pounce on him and start whooping him. And he has no idea why, but they do not want to get hit with the freezing cold water, so don't touch the banana or we all suffer. Then you take a second of the original apes out of the cage, bring in a new ape, so you have 2 old ones, 2 new ones. The last new ape gets on the ladder, starts to reach for the banana. The other 3 apes pounce on him, including one of the other new ape who has no idea why he is so enthusiastically beating the crap out of the new guy, even though he's never been sprayed with the cold water. Minute later, 3rd new ape comes in, same thing happens. You do this until you have 4 new apes in the cage, and none of them have ever been sprayed with the freezing cold water, but they don't dare climb the stairs to get the banana. You want to know why? Because that's always how we've done it around here. And so I thought of that this weekend, thinking about March Madness and this, and sitting back there on a Sunday watching things like FAU. My sister and brother-in-law went to FAU, so they're excited, first time ever in the Final Four, and they're not even basketball fans, but their beloved school has made it to the mountaintop of college sports, which is you're in the Final Four or you're in the college football playoff. Nonetheless, they're all excited about this. But I was sitting there thinking about it saying, wow, isn't this a metaphor? Maybe the NCAA seeding is an example of we've always done it this way, we've always done it with these selection committees, but we're not really getting into relative strength. Well, how many things are going on at your company that is just, with your people, is just like the 4 apes in a cage, and you've been the guy with the freezing cold water? And you have trained them that that's always how we do it around here. And I think it bears in mind at times you have to pull people out into a safe environment. Maybe you do it at an offside, and you have to show that you're not going to be the overpowering boss. And you have to demonstrate that you're not going to say, oh, we're going to have a strategy session, we're going to do that, but somehow you shut down bad ideas. Rather than letting ideas that are bad come out, and maybe let the crowd say, I don't know, really do that? Especially when you're not necessarily talking about like new ideas, like a product ideation meeting. You're actually honestly thinking about, how can we do things better? Customer service is big on Twitter. How can we do that better? E-commerce, we've done it this way. How can we do that better? You know, have we ever called our top 10 customers? How can we do that better? Do we get surveys when they bought stuff? Have we looked at our surveys lately? And everybody will say, no, we're too busy, we're trying to get things done, and that's how we've always done it around here. And I think that that is the lesson here, is find time to dive into your business and ask yourself, why is it that we've done this? Is that always the way we've done it around here? And is that the right answer, that we should keep doing it that way? So anyway, sorry for that, if you thought that was a long walk down a path there, but that's what I was thinking, looking at the seed, saying, what if there's nothing wrong with the teams in the tournament and there are some upsets? There's just the seeding doesn't really reflect the momentum of the teams. I like to pick the entire NFL playoff result flow. And there were, and I'm usually a contrarian, and 2 times I was correct all the way up to the end. And it was when there's a couple times I've been correct, but this is times I was correct as a contrarian. Both times I had the New York Giants getting healthy at the right time, and what I thought was a tough defense, going all the way and winning the Super Bowl. And one time, they beat them twice. They beat the New England Patriots. And people said, what were you thinking? And I said, I don't know. When I picked this at the beginning of the playoffs, I just thought they were healthy at the right time, and the wrong thing to do was follow convention wisdom, just look at the win-loss record. I looked at their last 3-4 games. I got a little deeper than that. And I think a lot of people do that, but a lot of people don't. And most sports, ESPN and others all have experts that say this or that, but they usually, if you listen to them, they usually kind of color inside the lines. And I just thought, well, maybe there's a different view and a different look you should take. So never be afraid as the boss to step in and take another look. And if you're the guy with the cold water, turn that off and see if maybe there's some creativity and things that come out of your staff that make your company bigger, better, stronger, faster, more profitable. All right, let's take a look here at some questions. What do we got? You had a question for me?
We do. From Heath. Biz Doc, what is your advice or opinions on credit unions opposed to banks?
Well, I think somebody asked about this last week, I think. Asked about the question about credit unions versus bank. So I'll give my same answer. Credit unions are usually associated with companies, and you can get lower interest rates. I think Navy Federal Credit Union is one of the big ones here for veterans of the armed forces, I believe. But as a matter of fact, I use a credit union. I have 2 backup banks, and one of them is a credit union. Why? Because you can usually get car rates there really, really cheap. Now, I probably wouldn't finance vehicle right about now, but when I could finance a vehicle for like 3%, and I could cram it into like 36 months, they're basically letting me use the car loan for 36 months at a really low rate. And by the way, always, always, always do an amortization so that if you could take a look at it, and I'll do it for you right now. So let's just I'm going to take and show you that why I'm a fan of credit unions and low interest rate car loans. Let's say I'm going to do 36 months because I saved my money. Maybe I could pay cash for the car, but I'm going to finance it. 36 months, we'll do $50,000. So you put a good amount down on an SUV, pay tax, title, and license, and you get it at 3.25%. Your payment is $1,459. Now, if you can carry that, that's good, and I'll tell you why. Watch this. You know what the amortization on that? Your total interest over 3 years, $2,400. So you take $2,400 divided by 36, $66 a month. That's all you're paying in interest. So basically, if you can make more than $66 a month on the 50 grand, then you do it that way. And credit unions are usually good facilitators of car loans and things like that. So I'm in favor of a credit union being in your portfolio as a backup for finances. And also, credit unions sometimes are good places for HELOCs and car loans at a little bit better rate than traditional banks. So that's what I think about that. Do we have any other questions that are interesting right now? Fantastic. So everything has its day. It seems like everything under the sun. There's Dog Day, Cat Day, the regulars, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Independence Day, things like that. But there's also, believe it or not, AirMax Day. Do you know when AirMax Day is?
I don't even know what an AirMax is.
AirMax Day was yesterday, March 26th of each year. And if you go to Nike's website, you can see reissues of AirMax 1, AirMax 95, AirMax 97 in all kinds of colors, retro colors, the Tailwind series, the Daybreak series. And if you're old as I am, you remember the original Tailwind and the original Daybreak and the original Columbia that they, for the Nike running shoes. And what was interesting is yesterday was, man, just with March Madness coming on, I don't know how Nike found ways to do this, but there was just so much richness on there. There's a bunch of articles written. Esquire wrote a very nice article about the history of Air Max. That's a fun read. Want to go read it? As a matter of fact, I flagged that article. You can go find Biz Doc 411 on valuetainment.com. And if you don't go to valuetainment.com, you're missing out on seeing a lot of articles from Valuetainment, as well as other contributors and yours truly, the Biz Doc. And this week, Biz Doc 411, which is 4 stats, 1 hero zero, and 1 article. And I pay homage to Gordon Moore, one of the co-founders of Intel and founder of Fairchild Semiconductor. We wouldn't have the chips we have today making things like this so cool if it wasn't for Gordon Moore and Andy Grove. But I also talk about, in that article, have a link to the Esquire article on Nike and AirMax Day. But you can find a ton of other stuff from contributors and also other videos and stuff like that. Links over to other podcasts. Jedediah Bila Live, got a link over to this. Saucecast, got a link over to him. And of course, the PBD podcast. But so you should check out valuetainment.com, look at the resources and stuff we have there. Something else that was going on as I was looking at AirMax Day is I thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have a company that was big enough where you could say, hey, today is AirMax Day and we're going to celebrate history, put a bunch of special order and special edition products out there. People come and buy them. So Nike has kind of made its own little Black Friday out of March 26, AirMax Day. And it's during March Madness where people are thinking about, well, basketball. And so you go on there and you find, Nike sneakers, and all those configurations and all the AirMax designs for sale. And so I just thought it was just a wonderful. I went in there and looked. I'm not allowed to buy more AirMaxes because I have too many. I'll have to show you the one I have at home. I have 2 that are Biz Doc models. Thank you very much to the good folks at Nike that are white with some special blue trim. I think I'll bring them in and show it to you sometime.
I want to see what they are.
The Biz Doc has his own sneakers. I don't think they sell them to the public just yet. Maybe someday. Maybe someday the Biz Doc will be so big that dad sneakers, Air Max 95s in the Biz Doc color combo, a very cool blue and white combination, will be out there. But something for you. Do you have one day a year where you set it aside for your company? And you're like, Tom, I'm a roofer. What am I going to do with AirMax Day? Well, maybe a roofer, maybe you call your 100 biggest or your 100 most recent customers and you say, I just want to let you know that today is March 27th and we're celebrating our 5-year anniversary and we don't get here without you. And this is our anniversary, but we're celebrating it by calling you and just thanking you for being our customer. And that's all we wanted to say is just thank you, because we're here for 5 years and the jobs and what we do here in the community doesn't happen without customers like you. Thank you for everything. And actually, it's probably better if they don't pick up so they can listen to the voicemail later and hopefully be inspired by that. But it's like, do you have a day a year? Maybe you do it with a retro product. Maybe you do it for anniversary. But you find a reason to make use of the day and you rally your employees around it. Maybe you recognize people with a spot award for the people that have been there, the longest. And you turn it into a celebration that you plan around. Because it's not fake. There's a genuineness that comes from, hey, this is our day, man. This is our history. We have been here and we have done it. And it doesn't happen without these customers. It doesn't happen without this. And it doesn't happen without certain suppliers. So you can make an AirMax Day, and maybe you'll be 20 years in business and people in your town will be talking about it because you run a restaurant and they think about you. Hey, May 1st, go check them out. It's not Cinco de Mayo, that's May 5th. You should go check out that restaurant May 1st. They do an open barbecue happy hour in the parking lot of the restaurant before they're serving dinner, just to celebrate the community that supported them. Whatever it is, be creative. But I really thought it was just so cool. But so that's AirMax Day, and why don't you have an AirMax Day? We have another question. Where would you invest 10 grand if you had it just laying around in the bank? That's a real tough one. I probably wouldn't be putting it into any banking stock, and you're kind of asking me for a stock pick here, which is kind of dangerous to do because I don't want to be giving investment advice. But I'll tell you, if you think TikTok's going to be banned, you know, Snapchat is sitting there. What are Snapchat right now? Do a real quick thing. Go Snap, ticker price.
Snapchat price?
Yeah, just Snap. Yeah, Snapchat, ticker price. 1183. So 1183, you could probably get, you know, 10,000 is a lot. And if you've worked hard to save that and you don't have a reserve account, my first advice to you is put some of that in a reserve account. And if you don't have a rainy day or reserve account with inflation the way it is, maybe the best place for that 10K is over there. If you still have a balance on a credit card, my advice is to knock down that balance. So the first thing would be is get out of debt and make sure your rainy day thing is set. Then if you still had the 10,000 laying around, looking at the headlines, you know, Snapchat's at 1183. It was down as low as $8 earlier this year. Maybe, you know, that's enough of a downsized risk that you buy some Snapchat and wait and see what happens with what's going on with TikTok and getting banned, because people think that TikTok's probably going to benefit. The benefit of a TikTok ban or even being constrained probably goes to Snapchat because they're so similar and have been kind of copying each other. But I'm not giving you stock advice. As a matter of fact, the best advice I could give you, knock down the debt, make sure you get your rainy day budget, and then, and only then, think about something like this. And it may be good with interest rates up just to put it in a money market account and just make that 4 or 5% and let the storm clouds clear. But there's my thoughts and comments on it. You know, I hope today that as we've gone through these stories, that the applicable part of it for entrepreneurs, and leaders of all kinds of businesses and nonprofits everywhere have been helpful to you. And one of the ways that I'm dedicated to it is through my case studies and my teaching. And I'm also available on Connect for dynamic questions. I'm also available through the Valuetainment consulting, staff to set up engagements to talk about things like fundraising decks, because we're all about educating, empowering, and encouraging entrepreneurs and leaders around the world. And one of the ways we do that is with the Valuetainment events. So if you have a sales leader on your team, or you're a small businessman, say 10 million or under, and you're effectively the sales leader of your group, I have something for you. And let's pop this up on screen. We got it up on screen. This is the Sales Leadership Summit. And this is elite sales leader training. It's taught by Patrick Bet-David, who built a massive life insurance sales organization, a nationwide sales organization that had tens of thousands of frontline agents, translated insurance salespeople providing great solutions for American families who needed insurance coverage, but nonetheless, elite salespeople that are providing that very important need in insurance through selling skills as well as product skills and life insurance. He has written the courses and the sessions and the topics that are at the Sales Leadership Summit. And it is in Boca Raton, Florida, April 24th to 25th. If you can make it and you are willing to put forward the time and investment in your business this year to strengthen your sales thing, while maybe some of your other competitors are out there saying, I'm going to save my money, I'm going to chill, I'm just going to get through this interest rate, get through this economy, get through this inflation. If they're doing that and you can bring the resource together to get yourself a plane ticket, the hotel room, and the fee for Sales Leadership Summit, do it. You will be building muscle for yourself. Again, if you're the sales leader and you're the entrepreneur that owns that company, or you're going to be bringing and demonstrating to your team that even when things might be a little tight, that when the economy's tough, we buckle down and we learn together. And you are going to go to the Sales Leadership Summit, my SVP, my VP of Sales, because I want you to come away stronger as we build through this economy. And that is what Valuetainment is all about. It's just one of the many programs and ways that we educate. The Sales Leadership Summit, coming at you, Boca Raton, Florida, 24th, 25th, and you will be led by the man himself, Patrick Bet-David, who has penned and conceived many of these same programs that drove his company to I can't say the number, but it was a big 9-figure number of a nationwide insurance organization that he sold to a fantastic organization in the insurance industry. Why? Because they wanted a boatload of fantastic salespeople, and that's exactly what he built. I'm Tom Ellsworth, the Biz Doc. For myself and Kellyanne, the Swiss Army knife. Hope this has all been useful for you. Hope this has been useful to you this week. Almost coughed right at you. And until next week, Mondays, 11:30. I hope I left you better than I found you. Crush it this week.